3 days before my wedding, my mother pulled me aside and made me promise something that changed the entire course of my marriage. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Never tell his family about the laundromats. Not a word about the properties. And especially not about the trust fund. Promise me." I thought she was being paranoid. I thought she was overreacting to a few snide comments from my future mother-in-law. But I promised anyway, because my mother had never steered me wrong. 48 hours after I said I do, my husband's family showed up at our apartment with a lawyer and demanded I sign papers giving up any claim to their family assets. They called me a gold digger. They said a girl from my background had no business expecting anything from their son. What they didn't know was that my mother had spent 23 years building a quiet empire worth over $3 million. And when I finally revealed the truth, the look on my mother-in-law's face was something I will remember for the rest of my life. Let me start from the beginning so you understand how we got here. My name is Denise, and I'm 34 years old. I grew up in a small apartment in Newark, New Jersey, with my mother, Lorraine. My father left when I was 2 years old. He just walked out one morning and never came back. No child support, no birthday cards, nothing. My mother was 24 years old with a toddler and no college degree. She could have given up. She could have let the system take care of us, but that wasn't who she was. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. During the day, she cleaned offices downtown. In the evenings, she worked the register at a grocery store. On weekends, she did hair in our kitchen for the ladies in our neighborhood. I grew up watching her hands move constantly, whether she was scrubbing floors, counting change, or braiding hair. She never complained. She never made me feel like a burden. She just kept moving forward. When I was 7, something happened that would change our lives forever. One of the office buildings my mother cleaned was owned by a man named Mr. Theodore Ashford. He was in his 70s, a widower with no children. He had noticed my mother's work ethic over the years. She was always the last one to leave, making sure everything was spotless. One evening, he found her crying in the break room. The grocery store had cut her hours, and she didn't know how she was going to make rent. Mr. Ashford sat down with her and listened, really listened. Over the next few months, he became something like a mentor to her. He taught her about business, about investing, about thinking long-term. When he passed away a year later, he left my mother $50,000 and a small laundromat in East Orange that was barely breaking even. My mother could have taken that money and bought us a nicer apartment, a car, new clothes. Instead, she kept us in the same small place, kept working her jobs, and poured every extra dollar into that laundromat. She fixed the machines herself by watching YouTube videos. She stayed open late to accommodate working families. She treated every customer like family. Within 3 years, that laundromat was turning a profit. She bought another one, then another. By the time I was in high school, my mother owned 4 laundromats across Essex County. But you would never know it by looking at us. We still lived modestly. I wore clothes from thrift stores. We took the bus everywhere. My mother said it was important that I learn the value of hard work, that I never develop the arrogance that comes with easy money. I didn't fully understand her philosophy back then. Sometimes I resented it. My classmates had nice things, went on vacations, drove cars their parents bought them. I had a bus pass and a part-time job at a fast food restaurant. But my mother kept telling me to trust her, that one day I would understand why she was doing things this way. I went to Rutgers on a scholarship. I studied business administration because I had watched my mother build something from nothing and I wanted to understand the mechanics of it. I graduated with honors and got a job at a marketing firm in Manhattan. I was proud of myself. I felt like I was finally building my own path. That's when I met Marcus. He was an architect at a firm that shared our building. We literally bumped into each other at the coffee cart in the lobby. He spilled his latte on my blouse, apologized profusely, and insisted on buying me a new one. I told him dry cleaning would be fine. He laughed and said he liked a woman who was practical. We started dating, and I fell hard. Marcus was kind, funny, and incredibly talented at his job. He came from a family in Connecticut that he described as comfortable. His father was a retired investment banker. His mother, Gloria, was a homemaker who spent her time on charity boards and country club events. They lived in a large house in Greenwich, and Marcus had grown up with all the privileges I had never known. The first time I met his family, I knew something was off. Gloria greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She looked at my department store dress, my simple shoes, my lack of designer accessories, and I could see her cataloging every detail. She asked where I was from, where I went to school, what my parents did. When I told her my mother ran a small business in Newark, she nodded slowly and said, "How industrious." That word stuck with me, industrious, like I was some kind of worker bee, not quite on her level. Over the next year of dating, the subtle jabs continued. Gloria would make comments about my quaint apartment in Jersey City. She would suggest that Marcus take me shopping so I could upgrade my wardrobe. She introduced me to her friends as Marcus's girlfriend from New Jersey, as if it were a disease. Her husband, Richard, mostly ignored me, which was almost worse. He would look through me like I wasn't even there. Marcus noticed some of it, but he always made excuses. "That's just how my mom is," he would say. "She doesn't mean anything by it." I wanted to believe him because I loved him, and I genuinely believed he loved me back. He never treated me as less than. He was proud to be with me. He talked about our future together with excitement and certainty. When he proposed, I said yes without hesitation. I told my mother that night, expecting her to be thrilled. Instead, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked me if I was sure about his family. I told her I was marrying Marcus, not his family. She nodded and said, "I hope you're right, baby, but in my experience, you always marry the family too." The wedding planning was a nightmare. Gloria wanted to take over everything. She insisted on a venue in Connecticut that cost more than my yearly salary. She wanted to invite 300 of her closest friends, people I had never met. She chose a caterer, a florist, a band, all without consulting me. When I pushed back, she would sigh dramatically and say she was just trying to help since my side of the family clearly couldn't contribute much. My mother kept her composure through all of it. She would come to planning meetings in her simple clothes, her sensible shoes, and Gloria would look at her with barely concealed disdain. Once, Gloria suggested that my mother might be more comfortable sitting in the back during the ceremony, since she probably wasn't used to these kinds of events. My mother just smiled and said she would sit wherever I wanted her to sit. I was furious on her behalf, but my mother told me to let it go, that getting angry wouldn't change who Gloria was. She said, "Some people only see what's on the surface. Let them underestimate us. It's actually a gift." I didn't understand what she meant. Not yet. A week before the wedding, my mother asked me to come to her apartment. She said she had something important to tell me. When I arrived, she was sitting at her kitchen table with a folder full of documents. She looked at me with an expression I had never seen before, a mixture of pride and solemnity. "Denise," she said, "I've been waiting for the right time to tell you this. Now that you're getting married, you need to know the truth about our financial situation." She opened the folder and began showing me papers, property deeds, business valuations, bank statements, investment portfolios. With each document, my eyes grew wider. My mother didn't just own 4 laundromats. She owned 7, spread across 3 counties. She had invested the profits into commercial real estate, buying small strip mall units and leasing them to local businesses. She had a stock portfolio that she had been building for 2 decades, and she had set up a trust fund in my name that I would gain access to on my 35th birthday. The total value of everything? Just over $3.2 million. I couldn't breathe. I literally could not breathe. I looked at my mother, this woman who had worn the same winter coat for 15 years, who still clipped coupons, who had never taken a real vacation in her entire life, and I burst into tears. "Why?" I asked her. "Why did we live like we had nothing when you had all this?" She took my hands and explained. She said she had seen too many people come into money and lose themselves. She had watched lottery winners go bankrupt. She had seen trust fund kids who had no work ethic, no character, no purpose. She wanted me to grow up understanding that your worth isn't measured by your bank account. She wanted me to develop grit, resilience, and humility. But more than that, she said, I wanted to see who would love you, not for what you have. And now I know Marcus loves you. I've watched him for over a year. He treats you right. He's a good man. I hugged her for a long time. Then she pulled back and looked at me seriously. "But his family," she said. "His family is another story. I've been watching them too. And I need you to promise me something. Don't tell them about any of this. Not the businesses, not the properties, not the trust. Not yet." I asked her why. She said she wanted to see their true character. If they knew about the money, they would change how they treated us, but not because they had actually changed. It would be fake. And we needed to know who they really were before we could decide how much to let them into our lives. I promised her. 3 days before my wedding, I promised my mother I would keep our wealth a secret from my in-laws. The wedding was beautiful, despite Gloria's meddling. Marcus and I said our vows surrounded by 200 people, most of whom I didn't know. But I focused on what mattered. The man standing in front of me, promising to love me for the rest of his life. My mother sat in the front row, wearing a simple navy blue dress she had owned for years. Gloria sat on the other side in a designer gown that probably cost more than my car. The contrast was stark, and I knew exactly what Gloria was thinking. She was thinking she had won. Her son had married beneath him, yes, but at least he was married, and the poor girl from Newark would learn her place soon enough. The reception was at the Greenwich Country Club. During the toasts, Gloria made a speech about how proud she was of Marcus for following his heart even when it led him somewhere unexpected. She talked about how marriage was about growing together and how she was sure I would grow into my new role in the family. It was condescending, dressed up as kindness, but I smiled and thanked her because my mother had taught me to pick my battles. Marcus and I spent our honeymoon in Costa Rica. It was perfect. For 1 week, it was just the two of us. No family drama, no subtle insults, just love and adventure. I almost forgot about Gloria entirely. Then we came home. 2 days after we returned, there was a knock on our apartment door. Marcus had gone to visit his parents for brunch, something he did every Sunday. I had begged off, saying I was tired from traveling. Really, I just needed a break from his mother. I opened the door expecting a delivery. Instead, I found Gloria standing there with her husband Richard, her sister Patricia, and a man I didn't recognize carrying a briefcase. They pushed past me into my apartment without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk," Gloria said, settling herself on my couch like she owned the place. Family business. My heart started racing. I asked where Marcus was. Gloria waved her hand dismissively. "He's at the house. We thought it best to have this conversation without him. You know how emotional he can get." The man with the briefcase introduced himself as their family attorney. He opened his case and pulled out a stack of documents. Gloria leaned forward with a smile that made my skin crawl. "Now, Denise," she said, "we all know you come from a very different background than our family. There's no shame in that. But we need to protect the family assets, and that means taking certain precautions. Our lawyer has prepared a post-nuptial agreement for you to sign." She slid the papers across my coffee table toward me. I picked them up with shaking hands and began to read. The document stated that in the event of divorce, I would have no claim to any property, investments, or assets belonging to the family or to Marcus. It stated that I entered the marriage with no significant assets of my own. It required me to waive any future inheritance from the family estate. I looked up at Gloria. "Does Marcus know about this?" "Marcus will understand," she said smoothly. "He knows how important it is to protect what generations of our family have built. A girl from your circumstances should appreciate that." Patricia, Gloria's sister, chimed in. "Honestly, dear, you should be grateful. Most families in our position wouldn't have allowed this marriage at all. We're trying to welcome you properly, but we need certain assurances." Richard spoke for the first time. "Just sign the papers, Denise. Don't make this difficult." I felt like I was going to be sick. These people had come into my home 2 days after my wedding to tell me I was worthless and needed to sign away my rights. They thought I had nothing. They thought I was desperate. They thought they had all the power. I thought about my mother's words. Let them underestimate us. It's actually a gift. I took a deep breath and told them I needed time to read the documents carefully. Gloria's face tightened. She said they needed my signature today, that their lawyer had other appointments. I told them that any lawyer would advise me not to sign legal documents without proper review. Gloria's smile vanished completely. "Listen here," she said, her voice dropping the pretense of sweetness. "I've tolerated this relationship for Marcus's sake, but don't think for a moment that you have any leverage here. You have nothing. Your mother has nothing. We could make your life very difficult if we wanted to. Marcus's career depends on connections in this community, connections we control, so I suggest you think very carefully about your next move." She stood up, smoothed her skirt, and headed for the door. She told me I had until Friday to sign, and then she left with her entourage. I sat in my empty apartment, trembling with rage. Then I called my mother. "Baby," she said calmly after I told her everything, "I think it's time we showed these people who they're dealing with." The next few days were a whirlwind. My mother connected me with her attorney, a sharp woman named Rosalind, who had been helping her structure her businesses for years. Rosalind reviewed the post-nuptial agreement and laughed out loud. She called it one of the most poorly drafted documents she had ever seen, designed purely to intimidate someone without legal knowledge. We prepared our own documentation. Property deeds showing my mother's ownership of 7 commercial laundromat facilities, lease agreements for the strip mall properties, the trust fund documents showing I would soon have access to over $1.3 million in my own name, recent appraisals putting my mother's total net worth at $3.2 million. "One more thing," my mother said. She pulled out another folder. I had a feeling about that family, so I did some research. Inside was information about the family's actual financial situation. The house in Greenwich, mortgaged 3 times. Richard's retirement, mostly depleted by bad investments. The family business that Gloria always bragged about, sold off 10 years ago to pay debts. They were living entirely on credit and reputation, projecting an image of wealth they no longer possessed. "They're broke," I whispered. "Worse than broke," my mother said. "They're drowning, and they thought you were their lifeline, a poor girl who would be grateful for whatever scraps they threw her and wouldn't ask questions about the family finances." I told Marcus everything that night. His face went through a dozen emotions as I showed him the documents from his mother, then the documents revealing my family's true wealth, then the research showing his family's financial reality. He was hurt, confused, and ultimately furious. Not at me, at his mother. He wanted to confront her immediately. I asked him to wait. I wanted to handle this my way. He agreed, trusting me, which meant more than he knew. Friday arrived. I put on a simple outfit, nothing fancy. I wanted to look exactly like they expected me to look. Poor, desperate, powerless. My mother came with me, wearing her worn winter coat. We arrived at Gloria's house right on time. The same cast of characters was assembled: Gloria, Richard, Patricia, and the lawyer. They ushered us into the formal living room with its antique furniture and crystal chandeliers, all the trappings of wealth that I now knew were probably purchased on credit. Gloria gestured to the documents on the table. "I trust you've made the right decision." I sat down across from her and pulled out my own folder. "Actually, I have a few concerns about the accuracy of these documents." Gloria's eyebrow raised. "Concerns?" I pointed to the clause stating I entered the marriage with no significant assets. "This isn't accurate. I do have assets." Patricia snorted. "What assets? Your used Honda?" I opened my folder and began placing documents on the table. One by one, property deeds for 7 commercial facilities in New Jersey, lease agreements showing consistent rental income, the trust fund statement, bank account records. With each document, the room grew more silent. "My mother," I said, "has spent the last 23 years building a business empire while people like you looked right through her. She owns these properties outright. No mortgages, no debt. The total current valuation is approximately $3.2 million, and upon my 35th birthday, $1.3 million of that transfers directly into my name." Gloria's face had gone pale. Her husband was leaning forward, examining the documents with disbelief. Patricia's mouth was literally hanging open. "I'm not the gold digger you thought I was," I continued. "In fact, I entered this marriage with significantly more assets than your son. But you were so busy looking down on us, so convinced of your own superiority, that you never thought to actually find out who we were. My mother spoke for the first time. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "We knew exactly who you were, though. We've known for a while." She pulled out the research documents showing their mortgages, their debts, their depleted accounts. She laid them on the table like cards in a poker game. "The difference between us," my mother said, "is that we built our wealth through hard work and didn't feel the need to humiliate anyone along the way. You inherited your position and spent your whole life looking down on people you thought were beneath you. Turns out, we're the ones who could have bought your house twice over." Gloria tried to recover. She stammered something about misunderstandings, about just wanting to protect the family, about how we were all on the same side now. I cut her off. "We're not on the same side. You came to my home 2 days after my wedding and tried to bully me into signing away my rights. You've spent the last year treating me and my mother like we were charity cases you had to tolerate. You don't get to pretend that didn't happen." I stood up and gathered my documents. "I love Marcus. That's the only reason I'm not telling him to cut off contact with you entirely. But our relationship is going to change. You will treat me and my mother with respect. Not because we have money, but because we are human beings who deserve it. If you can't do that, you'll see a lot less of your son and any future grandchildren." I walked out of that house with my mother beside me. In the car, we sat in silence for a moment. Then my mother started laughing. A deep, joyful laugh that I hadn't heard from her in years. I started laughing too. We laughed until tears rolled down our faces. Gloria called Marcus that night, trying to spin the story. He shut her down immediately. He told her he knew everything, that he was ashamed of how she had treated his wife, and that she needed to earn back his trust through changed behavior, not excuses. The months that followed were tense. Gloria made attempts at reconciliation that felt hollow at first. But slowly, as she realized that her usual tactics of manipulation and condescension no longer worked, something shifted. She began treating me like an actual person, not with warmth necessarily, but with respect. It was a start. Marcus and I bought a beautiful home in Montclair. We paid cash. When Gloria saw it for the first time, she had to sit down for a moment. I offered her water with a genuine smile. Some victories are best enjoyed quietly. My mother finally let herself enjoy some of the wealth she had built. She took her first real vacation, a cruise to the Caribbean. She bought a new winter coat. She started talking about maybe retiring in a few years, letting me take over the business operations. I told her she had earned whatever rest she wanted. A year later, I gave birth to a baby girl. We named her Lorraine, after my mother. When I told my mom, she cried in a way I had never seen before. Gloria was there at the hospital too, behaving herself, holding her granddaughter with something that looked almost like genuine emotion. Maybe people can change, or maybe she had just learned to hide her true feelings better. Either way, I wasn't going to let my guard down completely. My mother had taught me that lesson too well. Now, when I look at my daughter, I think about what I want to teach her. I want her to know that her worth isn't determined by her bank account, or her address, or her family name. I want her to treat everyone with respect, whether they're cleaning offices or running companies. I want her to be smart with money, but not obsessed with it. I want her to understand that true wealth is found in character, in relationships, in the values you live by every single day. My mother built an empire in silence while the world underestimated her. She wore the same coat for 15 years so that I could have options she never had. She endured condescension with grace because she knew the truth would eventually come out. And when it did, she didn't gloat or humiliate. She simply stood in her truth and let others adjust to it. That's the legacy I want to pass on, not the properties or the investments, though those will certainly help. The real inheritance is the wisdom, the strength, the quiet dignity that my mother embodied every single day of my life. To anyone listening who has ever been made to feel less than because of where you come from or what you have, I want you to know something. Your circumstances do not define you. The people who look down on you are often the ones with the most to hide. Keep working, keep building, keep believing in yourself. And when the moment comes to show the world who you really are, you will be ready. I was ready because my mother prepared me. Now I will prepare my daughter the same way. Not by giving her everything, but by teaching her that she is everything, with or without the money. Gloria learned that lesson the hard way. But she learned it, and now family dinners are almost pleasant. Almost. Some people take longer to grow than others. The important thing is that I no longer need her approval, and she knows it. That shift in power changed everything. My mother says that money is just a tool. How you use it reveals who you really are. Gloria used her perceived wealth to belittle and control. We used our actual wealth to build, to protect, and ultimately to set boundaries that made a healthier relationship possible. If I could give one piece of advice, it would be this: never reveal all your cards to people who haven't proven their character. My mother waited over a year to tell me the truth about our finances. She waited until she knew Marcus was worthy of the information, and she was right to wait. That patience, that discernment, protected me from people who would have used me if they had known the truth from the start. I am 34 years old now. I have a beautiful daughter, a loving husband, and a mother who taught me that real power comes from knowing your own worth, not from making others feel worthless. The woman who tried to make me sign away my dignity is now the same woman who asks permission before visiting her granddaughter. That's not revenge. That's just consequences. And there's a certain peace in watching someone finally understand that they cannot treat people poorly without eventually facing the truth. My mother is planning to take little Lorraine to the playground next week. Just a grandmother and her granddaughter, looking like any ordinary pair from any ordinary neighborhood. No one walking by will know about the laundromats, the properties, the trust funds, and that's exactly how we like it. Some empires are built in silence, and the most powerful people are often the ones you least expect. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope something in it resonates with you, wherever you are, whatever you're going through. Remember that your struggle today is building your strength for tomorrow, and never let anyone make you feel small just because they can't see your greatness yet. It's there. Trust me, it's there.